Welcome to NBA Now by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff, and on today's show, we are going to talk about a potential Giannis Antetokounmpo trade. Why, you might ask? Well, insider Bill Reiter reported that Giannis could ask out of Milwaukee if things go poorly for the Bucks this season. And well, it has not been the smoothest start for Milwaukee at this point. They are just 1-3 at the point of filming. Depends on when you're watching this. They do play Thursday night. We are releasing this Thursday afternoon, and before their game against the Grizzlies tonight, they are 1-3. So it has been a rocky start for the Bucks early on. Doc Rivers could be to blame. You could blame Chris Middleton being out, but the fact of the matter is this Bucks roster just isn't as good as it was anticipated to be when Dame trade happened last September. He has not been the Damian Lillard in Portland. Chris Middleton has not been on the court. Brook Lopez is getting older. Bobby Portis is getting older. And there just isn't a lot of young talent on this Bucks roster, which, according to Bill Reiter, could lead to Giannis asking out of the Milwaukee Bucks organization via trade. And before we get into some destinations that come to mind here, let me know, what is the top Giannis Antetokounmpo trade destination in your mind down in the comments section? Pick a team, just one, and let me know where you think Giannis is more likely to end up. Well, we might have an idea of where he could end up. What do I mean by that? Well, in that same report and article from the CBS Sports Insider Bill Reiter, he also mentioned that an Eastern Conference executive has heard that the Miami Heat and Brooklyn Nets could be two trade landing spots for Giannis. At least he prefers them compared to other teams. And, well, we will talk about Miami. We'll talk about Brooklyn here, as I have 5 destinations myself on where I think Giannis could land in the best spots and more likely spots here. And the number one spot we will talk about is Miami with the Heat. They've had a rocky past couple of years. Yes, they made the NBA Finals in 2023, but they made a historic run as an 8 seed. Last season, 8 seed again, and they got bounced in the first round by the Boston Celtics. And now this year, they're 2-2 through their first 4 games, losing to Orlando and New York, but beating Charlotte and Detroit Pistons. And we've always known that Pat Riley will go star hunting and that he is always looking for that next whale to add to the roster. Well, with how things have been trending for the Miami Heat, it could behoove them to move off Jimmy Butler and start a build around Bam Adebayo. And no better way for them to potentially fast-track that build without Jimmy and around Bam than somehow acquiring Giannis Antetokounmpo, a top 5 player in the association. And there has been love between these two in the past. Giannis, before he signed his most recent extension with Milwaukee, if he was rumored to hit free agency or ask out via trade if they did not make a run to the NBA Finals, Miami could have been that spot. Like, people forget, after the Heat beat the Bucks in the bubble in the first round of the postseason, or excuse me, the second round of the postseason, there was talks that if Milwaukee had a bad 21 season, they could have a Giannis Antetokounmpo issue on their hands. Well, ultimately, we know they beat the Heat in the first round of the playoffs the following year and then went on their way to win the finals against the Phoenix Suns. But since then, it just simply hasn't been as good, and history almost repeated itself 2 years ago when the Heat beat the Bucks in the first round of the postseason as an 8-1 matchup. And then last year, the Bucks simply just could not get it going, and they lost in the first round again to the Indiana Pacers. So all these reasons could build up to him being traded to Miami, somewhere that it's been open that he's liked and adored in the past. He likes the city. He likes Eric Spoelstra. Now, the question would be, if you are seeing Giannis go to the Miami Heat, would it trade be in the offseason, or would it be this year at the deadline if he asked out? Because if it's at the deadline, you could start to forecast a potential Jimmy Butler, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Jovic, and multiple first-round picks package heading to the Bucks. They get Jimmy, they get 2 young guys and 2 first-round picks, and they'll need Jimmy Butler's salary to match in a Giannis Antetokounmpo deal. But if it happens in the offseason, maybe a sign-and-trade could happen where Milwaukee gets Jimmy, who's expected to opt out of his contract and become a free agent. It all depends on when Giannis may ask out of Milwaukee, if he ultimately does, when determining what a Miami Heat package would look like. The number 2 destination in my mind is actually Houston Rockets, and this one makes a sense for any star that becomes available. Houston has a lot of assets. I mean, they have 9 tradable first-round picks. They have a ton of capital, and they have the young talent to pair with that, where you can offer young players as well as draft picks. You've got Reed Shepard, Cam Whitmore, Jabari Smith, Jalen Green, Alfred Şengün. Now, Green and Şengün just signed extensions, so they wouldn't be eligible to be traded for a while. But ultimately, you see the vision in terms of the Rockets having the picks and the young players to move and get Giannis. And they're on the rise. They're playing better basketball. They've got some pieces. You got a big contract in Fred VanVleet that is movable. Signed a 3-year deal last season, so he's in year 2. So that contract could be expiring after this year or a year and a half left if you deal him at the deadline. So the Rockets make the most sense to me because you infuse Giannis Antetokounmpo with the young talent they have, Ime Udoka at head coach, and now you become a competitive team in the Western Conference. It's a move that actually may make a lot of sense to me. And if I'm Giannis and I want to trade and move somewhere else, I think the Rockets are at the top of their list. And if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, by the way, I think the Rockets would be at the top of your list in terms of partners to work with, just due to the sheer draft capital they have and the young talent. I think if you're a team that is going to get rid of a superstar in the next little bit here, I think the Rockets are the first team you should always call, just due to the amount of capital and assets they ultimately have. 3 more destinations coming up in just a second, but we are sponsored by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in North America. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action, with it being eligible in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. You can play daily. You can play weekly. Think Steph Curry will get more than 4 3-pointers next week? Anthony Edwards for more than 27 points. Cook up your hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. And I play Prize Picks on a daily basis, and I already have a nice little cooked up entry for tonight's Thursday's games. I got the more than an Alfred Şengün, half of 3-pointers made, more than Ja Morant, 21 points, and less than Devin Booker, 2.5 3-pointers made. You can play any way you want. I also have season-long projections in as well for the basketball season. So make sure you do sign up today. Download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Shout out to them. That link is in the description and comments of today's video. Appreciate Prize Picks for hopping on board. All right, the next destination that we're going to talk about is one that was mentioned in that report from Reiter, and that is the Brooklyn Nets. And it does make sense from Milwaukee's side to trade him to Brooklyn. Now, when you talk about Giannis having the Nets as a preferred destination, that one is a little bit of a head-scratcher. But the Nets have a lot of picks as well, just like the Houston Rockets, due to them trading away Kyrie and Kevin Durant and some other moves that they made. And with Ben Simmons' contract coming off the books soon, they'll have a lot of money to extend players, add people in free agency, so it could become an enticing destination in the near future. But that's the kind of thing here. Giannis, 29 years old, does he want to compete now? Because if he does want to compete in the next 2 to 3 seasons, it probably makes sense to just stay in Milwaukee rather than go to, say, a destination like Brooklyn. But if he's looking towards the future and looking what they can build, Giannis, with all those draft picks and the money coming off the books, could find himself adding to that roster around him. And potentially the Nets, who are projected to have a bad season this year, is likely going to be the case. If this trade happens in the offseason, could Cooper Flagg, the freshman phenom at Duke, who is projected to be the #1 overall pick, find his way to Brooklyn and maybe sway Giannis to wanting to go to the Nets? I think that is an intriguing scenario. You get Cooper Flagg, Giannis in that front court together, and you got a really young duo that could be tons of fun in the NBA. I don't think it would make sense for Giannis to want to go to Brooklyn right now, but it would make sense for Milwaukee to want to have a conversation with the Nets, and maybe in 1 or 2 years, if Giannis then requests a trade, the Nets would become a preferred destination based on what they have built. A destination that would make a lot of sense, in my opinion, and is #4 on this list, is the San Antonio Spurs. We talked about potentially having Cooper Flagg sway Giannis Antetokounmpo to want to go to the Nets and pair up with that young star. Well, there's already a young stud in San Antonio in Victor Wembanyama. And this is scary to think about, folks. If you get Giannis and Victor Wembanyama in the same front court, Wemby at the 5, Giannis at the 4. That would be terrorizing. Like, think about what they could do defensively, but not only offensively. Wembanyama continuing to improve, add muscle to his frame so he doesn't get bossed around inside. Giannis would obviously help with that due to the physical nature of him and how they call him a Greek freak for an absolute reason, guys. And them two being able to switch inside defensively as well as defend on the perimeter, space the floor, finish around the rim. Like, I'm telling you, I would be getting nightmares if I was opponents going up against the San Antonio Spurs every single night. Now, would they win a title right away? I don't know, but they would be making opponents fear them, and it would make opponents have to really rely on their jump shooting ability because no one is going to want to drive inside into the paint when Wemby and Giannis are sitting there ready to block your shot. Wemby, already one of the best rim protectors in the NBA. Giannis, someone who has depoy caliber of defense as well as averaging 2+ blocks a game. Those two would be scary good together defensively, and we aren't even talking about how much pressure they would put on the rim for opposing defenses. You pair those two up with a solid guard in the backcourt, maybe a leap from Devin Vassell or Stephon Castle, who they drafted in the first round. Who knows? He might have to be in a trade towards the Milwaukee Bucks if he went to San Antonio, but you start to get pretty giddy about the potential of Giannis and Victor Wembanyama, which is why I have them as a top 5 destination. The final destination we're going to talk about on today's show is actually the Memphis Grizzlies, and this one is an intriguing one that many might not suggest, but the Grizzlies have a lot of young talent that they could move. The draft capital isn't as good as, say, a Spurs, a Nets, or a Rockets. They're very similar in terms of Miami, in terms of their draft assets, but just also have better young talent to trade because they have Desmond Bane, they have Jaren Jackson Jr., and I think they'd be willing to move off Jaren Jackson Jr. to add Giannis Antetokounmpo. Unlike Miami, where their best player that is relatively young, Bam Adebayo, the Heat would likely not trade Bam for Giannis because they would probably, if they have the idea of adding Giannis, want him to pair with Bam in that front court. But here, if you move off of Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane plus picks, you now have a Ja Morant-Giannis duo. Not saying that Memphis would be willing to move off Desmond Bane in that 2-3 position, but a Ja Morant-Giannis pick and roll and duo in the Western Conference would just be loads and loads of fun. He might be the point guard that Giannis was hoping to get when they made a move for Damian Lillard in 2023. There's no guarantee that the Grizzlies would be interested in Antetokounmpo, but it would be hard to imagine if Giannis does ultimately request a trade from the Milwaukee Bucks before the deadline or in the offseason ahead of us in 2025, that the Memphis Grizzlies would not at least be interested in the idea of pairing him with Ja Morant. I'm certainly interested, and I am not a Grizzlies fan nor someone in that front office. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Appreciate you guys sticking with us here on the episode. Let me know your thoughts down below on where Giannis could be traded and the destinations that I named. And if you have more to talk about and want to hit me up on my socials, Nic_Rohloff is my handle on X/Twitter. I won't be afraid to respond to you guys in the DMs or the replies. So go give me a follow over there and let's continue the conversation.